I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Silly Jedi, silly Jedi.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
Hey everybody, welcome to Jedi Toy Masters Car Talk. It's, well, I'm gonna get right to it. It's been a while, well not a while, because there have been videos every week, but it's been a couple of weeks since I sat in my car and talked about The Rise of Skywalker. The last time I talked about it was before the movie was released, and I kind of shared a little bit of my hesitations and all that stuff. So if you haven't seen any of the other Car Talk videos, I invite you to check them out. I will put them in the info card over here, the playlist for all of the Jedi Toy Master Car Talks, Star Wars Car Talks, and also I did 2 live streams recently. I've been playing around with the live streaming, and I did a pre The Rise of Skywalker live stream with a good friend of mine, JC, huge Star Wars fan as myself. We're the same age, so we kind of grew up with Star Wars at the same time, around the same time. So like, you know, we kind of gave our predictions and our our fan theories. So that's an interesting video. It's a little bit long, but if you want to, if you're at work or, you know, somewhere you just want to listen to it in the car, you could go ahead and just pop that up. It's on the YouTube, right here on the YouTube channel. So I'll link it right there also. And also we did a post The Rise of Skywalker live stream, which also went a little long. I'll warn you on that. But we just scratched the surface of what we thought of the movie and our, you know, our likes and dislikes, and this was like our initial reaction to it. So that's also on there, and again, I'll link that right there. And if you're new to the channel, thank you for watching. This channel is a Star Wars family channel. We do a lot here, even though we're called Jedi Toy Masters. Our love of Star Wars is, you know, originated with me and my love of the original films, but then it kind of spilled over into the love of the toys and the toy culture, the Star Wars toy culture, and that's kind of like how I got my boys into Star Wars. So please check out some of our other videos. We have toy unboxings, we have toy reviews, we have toy hunts on here, we have you know, reaction videos and reviews, and then we have this Star Wars Car Talk, which is kind of like the I can't say after hours show. It's not the late night show. This is like an early morning show that comes out every Friday, or at least I try to put it out every Friday. So anyway, if you're new, please like and subscribe the video and share our channel. If you know somebody that loves Star Wars and they're like, hey, check out this Star Wars channel, it's really cool, we would appreciate that. Anyway, check us out on Instagram too at Jedi Toy Masters. We actually are more active. Well, we're equally active, but we're a lot more active on there as far as back and forth with the community, the great Star Wars community and the Star Wars toy community on Instagram. So anyway, The Rise of Skywalker, again, like I said, we did a video where we talked about it, and but that was like a day or two after I saw it, like maybe a day after I saw it. And let me backtrack. So Rise of Skywalker dropped December 20th. The night of December 19th, I went to go see it, a late night show with my younger brother, Aaron, who him and I basically started Jedi Toy Masters before we thought of Jedi Toy Masters later on. So him and I have been loving Star Wars for years. He's younger, so I kind of introduced Star Wars to him, and I also introduced him to the toys, and, you know, I've talked about this in other videos, but we went to go see it, and we were, you know, we both kind of, we hadn't talked about it, you know, we only kind of briefly would share, like, well, oh, what'd you think of this trailer, or what do you think about this title, The Rise of Skywalker, you know, but we hadn't really talked about what our expectations were, or how we were feeling going into it. And it wasn't until we sat in the theater next to each other that we were kind of both in the same mind space. We were kind of cautiously optimistic and just, you know, just nervous, like nervous that this movie was gonna be a letdown, honestly. So anyway, watched it with my brother. Excuse me. Came out of the theater that night and drove home. I drove him home, and it was weird because we were entertained. It was an entertaining movie. Like, right off the bat, you know, we were like, wow, that was definitely a fun, you know, roller coaster ride of a movie. It kind of checked off a lot of boxes, and you know, was an entertaining movie. It was like a blockbuster summer movie in the winter. But there were just some things that I just felt, and him as well, just felt uneasy about, and we couldn't put our finger on it. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I didn't know whether I liked it or not, and I was afraid to admit that to myself. And I even like did a quick live stream on Instagram that night, like in my car after I dropped them off, and I'm like parked in front of my house, and I needed to like vent some thoughts before I went to bed, because otherwise I wasn't going to be able to sleep that night. And I just didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to feel about it. There was a lot of emotions and thoughts running through my head, and at the same time I couldn't like gather them up to form a concrete opinion or a concrete feeling of what I felt for this movie. So thankfully the next day, Friday, I had already purchased tickets to go see it. The whole Jedi Toy Masters clan, we were gonna go see it. My three little guys and my lovely wife, and you know, we were all gonna go see it right after school. So the boys had their like Christmas parties in class, and then immediately after we signed them out, went straight to the theater and watched The Rise of Skywalker. And that was a little bit better. Like I noticed that with like the prequels and the sequel movies, being able to watch them through my son's eyes. Now my sons are 7, 5, and 2, and I've been able to really appreciate and enjoy the prequels a lot more because of them. You know, and even these sequel movies, I've been able to really kind of connect a little bit more emotionally with the characters of the sequel trilogy a lot more because of my sons, because I get to like kind of enjoy it through their eyes. Like I'm loving this Star Wars through, like, you know, vicariously through them, if that makes sense. And parents, if you're out there and you're a Star Wars fan and you have kids that are now into Star Wars and they tend to lean more towards the prequels or the sequels instead of the originals, which is what we loved, you know, like how do you, you know, like, it's interesting. It's just an interesting feeling, but also cool because this is their Star Wars and there's tons of flavors of Star Wars to choose from at this point. But watching it the second time, I was able to really formulate my thoughts a little bit better. My wife especially had her own strong opinions. She immediately thought, you know, like she didn't really understand or connect with Kylo's turn to spoiler alert, guys, if you haven't seen The Rise of Skywalker, I'm gonna talk about it. But she didn't fully really think that it was a great a good emphasis was put on Kylo turning back to Ben in the movie. And even though the Han Solo scene was fantastic, it was very emotional, but if you take that scene out and you look at it for what it is, it was really like it was okay. So long story short, this is the problem with me and the sequel trilogy. I'm not saying this is the problem, and if you don't agree with this, then you don't know what you're talking about and you're an idiot and you like dumb movies and you like bad movies. No, I'm not gonna do what a lot of people have been doing, which is basically say that, you know, if you think these movies are good and if you like them, well then you're an idiot. Because you know what, there's plenty of bad movies out there that people love, and just because they're bad doesn't mean, I mean, there's podcasts dedicated to watching bad movies and talking about them, and then, you know, saying whether they're a good bad movie, you know, a movie you kind of liked or whatever. Like, you know, shout out to oh my gosh, the Flophouse. This is one of the podcasts that I listen to. Excuse me. They talked about The Rise of Skywalker, and they kind of like were split down the middle as far as liking it and not liking it. But anyway, my personal problem with the sequel trilogy, and it might be the same problem that a lot of people have. So if you agree with this, then, you know, okay. And if you don't, well, that's fine too. Because my sons love the sequel trilogy. They love The Force Awakens, and they love the Rise of Skywalker. They keep telling me they want to see it again. The Last Jedi, they don't really talk about much, and for good reason, because it's kind of, The Last Skywalker was kind of like a little weird adventure in between these two that let's see if it stands the test of time. But they love the prequels. They love Duel of the Fates. My son Logan wants to listen to Duel of the Fates all the time in the car. They love Battle of the Heroes from episode 3. They love that music and that idea. My son Blake has like an emotional reaction to episode 3 where he can't watch it anymore because he has an emotional reaction to Anakin turning to Darth Vader and that friendship with Obi-Wan being ruined. Like it hurts him being the middle son, and having a big brother and a little brother. Like, I guess he has like an emotional reaction to that, you know. But so it's amazing. Like, I'm, you know, enjoying it through them. But my problem with the sequel trilogy, and it's like it's like having these big glasses in front of me that don't let me enjoy the sequel trilogy for what they are, and doesn't let me appreciate the story that was being told, because this sequel trilogy wasn't planned out. There was no vision. There was absolutely no vision, no direction. You know, each movie was made by basically a different creator when you think about it. Even though J.J. Abrams helped write and he directed The Rise of Skywalker, everybody was like, oh, he came back to finish the trilogy. Yeah, but now this is like a different JJ. You know, he didn't write this with Lawrence Kasdan. He doesn't have the pressure of, I mean, he has different pressures because obviously he's directing the last Star Wars saga movie, but it's not like, oh, we're revamping Star Wars. This is like a new Star Wars. You know, there's a lot of pressure there. Like, what direction are we gonna go? You know, he set the course in the Force Awakens, and he set things up that didn't really pay off at all in any of the other movies. He set up Snoke, that didn't really pay off. He set up what's this lady's name with the big eyes, whatever, Maz Kanata. He set her up as somebody that's almost like Yoda, that's been around for a long time and happens to have Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, and that's a story for another day. That had no payoff. You know, you had flashbacks of Rey, and all these flashbacks where she saw visions of like Luke, and visions of her parents leaving, and visions of the Knights of Ren, and visions of the forest battle. Like, all this stuff, that those visions didn't really pay off much. You had you know, the whole thing with Luke, the Force Awakens ended with such a dramatic, such an emotional scene. Luke's face at the end of The Force Awakens was so emotional, and yet there was no payoff to that, because in the next movie he just tosses the lightsaber over his shoulder and spends the whole movie moping and saying how he doesn't want to be a Jedi anymore. And then finally he does something amazing at the end. So it took a 1 3/4 of a movie to see Luke Skywalker actually be Luke Skywalker, and barely, because it was a force projected hologram. There was no real payoff for, you know, I mean, even the fact that you kill Han Solo in this movie to really set up to do two things: get rid of Han Solo for good, because Harrison Ford did not want to do Star Wars movies anymore, and he probably had it in his contract that the only way he'll do this movie is if he dies, so that no one will ever ask him again if he'll ever be in a Star Wars movie again. But also to kind of like really set up Kylo Ren as the villain. But then you spend the next 2 movies basically saying how he's not really the villain, he's just a tortured soul that we should feel sorry for, and that he needs to be redeemed. So it's like, if you're gonna set up this guy as the villain in the first one, okay, well then, you know, then make him the villain. If he's gonna go all bad, make him go all bad. If you're gonna say, well, that Snoke was pulling the strings, okay, well then have Snoke be the ultimate villain, the ultimate bad guy. But don't kill him off in the next movie and then say, oh no, he was just some crazy clone that Palpatine created in a jar, like you know, like he was pickling them in jars and then, you know, using them. There's an entire comic book series right now that's focused on how Snoke seduced Kylo Ren and all that stuff. So all this time, he was just nothing. He was just like some empty puppet that was being controlled by Palpatine from a planet that's like so far away, so hard to get to, that I don't even know how he would be able to control somebody like that. Like, and then Palpatine, then you bring back Palpatine, and it is complete bull that, it was always the plan to bring back Palpatine. That was always the plan. No, it wasn't. Stop. I hate that Disney Star Wars thinks that we're idiots. They think that we're so stupid that they can put out all these little press releases and put out all these quotes, and that we'll buy it. That we'll buy right into it. They won't believe all the nonsense that they'll say. Oh, yeah, no, this was the plan all along. Oh, that's great. Oh, wow, yeah. You know, listen, we've been here before. We've been down this road before with George Lucas. George Lucas didn't really have a clear vision for the original trilogy. He was also kind of making it up as he goes, but he had created basically a formula, a master plan for what Star Wars was, and that master plan changed here or there, but he had a clear vision of what Star Wars was. And even with the prequels, he knew where it was going to end up. It was going to end up leading into the original trilogy. So he knew that he had this time period to play with, the prequel era. So he could be as crazy and wild as he wanted to, as long as it wrapped up in a neat little bow to be able to, you can see that it was going to turn into what the original trilogy was. This sequel trilogy was just a soft reboot of Star Wars, so that Disney can get rid of all the original Star Wars characters and like really like it was basically like buying an old house and saying, oh no, yeah, we love this house, that's why we bought it. But then slowly from the inside out, you're like basically redoing this house, and at the end of the day you realize, you know what, we're working on this house, we're doing all this stuff, let's just knock the whole thing down and build a new house and make the house that we really wanted. And that's what this sequel trilogy was. This sequel trilogy was basically little by little knocking down what's the original structure of Star Wars, just knocking it down so that you can lay out the foundation for the new Star Wars, the new house that you're gonna build. So you didn't really buy Star Wars because you liked Star Wars, because you wanted to live in this Star Wars. You just wanted the property so that you could eventually knock it down and build the property that you actually wanted. That's it. And that's my problem with the sequel trilogy. And that's why when I look at it through those foggy glasses, it's hard for me to appreciate and enjoy Star Wars. This Star Wars. It's really hard. Like, and case in point, when Disney Star Wars does it right and they stick to the original feel and the original, like, I don't even know, like the original tapestry of Star Wars, then you get Rogue One and you get The Mandalorian. But when you try to kind of change things up to a point where you don't recognize it that much anymore, you get the sequel trilogy and you get Solo. You know, let's take this character that we already know and love, and we don't need to know anything more, and let's just like add some crazy nonsense to his backstory, where now it doesn't really make sense that this is him. This is Han Solo. But anyway, Solo wasn't a horrible movie. It was entertaining as well. I wish that Solo would have been the first Disney Plus Star Wars movie. That would have been great, because then after that could have been almost like a backdoor pilot to like a Solo series that now you can play around with in that world a little bit more and let it breathe. But as far as the sequel trilogy, you know, the whole thing with Rey, who are your parents, blah, blah, blah. Daisy Ridley said in an interview when The Force Awakens came out that she, whatchamacallit, that she said that in The Force Awakens, here, let me see, because I had notes. She said that in The Force Awakens, it was quite obvious who her parents were. Now, looking back now, she was probably just kind of saying that to throw people off. You know, that was probably something that she was told to say, or like she was just being maybe sarcastic, right? And then in when The Last Jedi was coming out, before The Last Jedi came out, she almost said Darth Plagueis at a press conference, like at a Comic-Con or something, a panel, and J.J. Abrams immediately like interrupted her. And so that was kind of like set up to, you know, that was a setup too. These were things that were just like, these actors had no idea where this story was going. You know, people think, oh, well, maybe the actors will like drop a spoiler and maybe they know nothing. These actors that were in these movies were just thanking their lucky stars that they get to be in a Star Wars movie, and rightly so. And they just basically got their scripts, like, you know, just to read, and that's it. Like they didn't have any input into the story. They were not, you know, these were just actors. They're paid to play these characters, and that's it. The people that were supposed to know what the heck this story was about is the Disney Story Group. The Disney Story Group, they were the ones, along with like maybe having like Kathleen Kennedy, and maybe, I don't know, inviting George Lucas in to be a consultant like they were originally supposed to. And which, to that point, they should have just used the story treatments that George Lucas had and just tweaked those a little bit. That's all they needed to do. And that sequel trilogy right there, I don't even know what it was going to be about, but knowing that George Lucas had written that treatment and that it was tweaked then by these directors that they would bring on, that would have been fine. Have a treatment for what this next 3 Star Wars movies were going to be about. What was it going to be about? Who are going to be the main characters? Who are going to be the villains? Like, that wasn't established. Every movie swapped who. In The Force Awakens, it was all about Rey. In The Last Jedi, it was all about Kylo Ren. And Luke, kind of. And now in The Rise of Skywalker, it's like, oh, it's Kylo Ren, but no, it's back to Rey now, and she's important, and because she's a Palpatine. Oh, so okay, so and when did Palpatine become a father? And what? You know, it's just hard for me to enjoy these movies. I'm not saying these were bad movies. This sequel trilogy is not bad. Okay, we have the prequel trilogy, all right? Those exist, and people love them and people hate them, but they exist and they're there. So this sequel trilogy is going to be there. People are going to love them, people are going to hate them, and they're going to be there. You know, the original trilogy are just going to always be on this pedestal because they're the originals and they're the classics. And honestly, less is more. With the original trilogy, it was the limitations in the technology and the limitations in what you can do that made those movies so character driven, and we fell in love with those characters that we didn't care. Our imagination filled in the gaps. But with these other movies, you know, the prequels, there was nothing left for the imagination. You know, it was like all the way to one side. And with the sequel trilogy, it was like, well, this looks enough like Star Wars that we don't need to really go deep, or we don't really need to explain anything. Like, you were taking us for granted as fans, and I don't know what the future holds for Star Wars. I know I'm going to keep loving Star Wars. I'm going to keep watching Star Wars, but those are my 2 cents on The Rise of Skywalker. I'm not going to go into like all the things that I didn't like and all the things that I liked, because there's been plenty of people that point these things out. I'm just upset that now that the dust has settled, like, it's like, what was this trilogy about? What was this trilogy about? Like, all the original characters were kind of sidelined, and you just used them for fan service, but you sidelined them. Like, the legacy, like what they struggled for, what Princess Leia and Luke and Han, what they fought for, what they struggled for, everything they've been through, meant nothing. where the heck did the First Order come from? How did Palpatine have an entire legion, an entire like empire set up in hiding on a planet? Like, come on. I would have loved the sequel trilogy to have been about like flipping the script, whereas the original trilogy was about the rebels and their fight against the Empire. The flipping the script would have been nice if you had the New Republic was now the big thing, and then you had this like First Order or type of thing that they were the rebels, and they were trying to like, they're like this like almost like a terrorist group. They're trying to like create problems in the galaxy, even though they're not big like the Empire, but there's enough of them to be a formidable threat. And then on the other side, you could have had, you know, the coming back of the Sith somehow, and how now it's time for the children of Han and Leia, and maybe even establishing the fact that, you know, maybe Luke has some students that now is mentoring, and these are the new Jedi, and it's been hard because the Sith have been coming back. Like make, you know, I don't know. I'm literally thinking out loud, and what I'm thinking about sounds more interesting than what this sequel trilogy was about. So anyway, I'm sorry to end this on such a like sour note, but the more I think about it and the more I talk about it, the more I'm disappointed, because I really wanted the sequel trilogy to be great. And this is my opinion. This is just how I feel. This is my burden. This is my baggage that I'm bringing into it. There's some of you might feel this way, some of you might not. There's people that love this sequel trilogy. They love these characters. They love Rey and Finn and Poe. I just had a hard time really loving any of these characters. I think Kylo Ren was probably the most interesting character, and that's about it. None of the other characters are interesting to me. Man. But I love Star Wars, don't get me wrong. I love The Mandalorian. I love the fact that everything's on Disney Plus and we can just watch it anytime we want. My son Blake loves Rogue One. He wants to see it over and over again. Logan loves the prequels, and he wants to, and he really likes the sequel trilogy. He wants to see Episode 9 again. So I mean, you know, they asked to rewatch Return of the Jedi the other day, a couple weeks ago. They wanted to watch it, and they love it. So it's great that they can love Star Wars and not. I'm trying to enjoy it through their eyes, where they don't care what order they watch them in. They don't care that this one is weaker than that one. They just enjoy. It's just Star Wars to them. Everything is Star Wars, and that's a good thing. I'm learning and trying to look at it through their eyes, because otherwise, if I look at it through my eyes, my own eyes, then I'm just gonna be disappointed because of this sequel trilogy. All right, well, if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed my rant, please hit like and subscribe, and we'll try to put out one of these every Friday, Star Wars Car Talks. So thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.